broadcasting from Zoom, so we'll give this a try. Welcome, everybody. Today's a fun topic. It's a tough topic that I wanted to take some time to speak about and have a little bit of you know, deep thoughts about what makes sense for you, what makes sense for your family, for what you want your life to become, where you see yourself in 5 years, all those kind of, deep, profound questions. But today our topic is, as a queer homebuyer, should you stay in Utah or leave? So anybody on a live stream or a Zoom chat, feel free to pop in your opinion, your thoughts. There's no wrong answers. This is a safe space. Everybody's welcome. 99% of people are welcome. We'll get to that later. But if you have any thoughts or questions, you can also hop on the Zoom if you want to come on and speak and join the conversation directly, or chat it up and I'll get it in. So one of the things that I thought was relevant to our conversation today, and let me make sure it says that we're connecting at fair speed. Let me make sure we're on network properly. Okay, I think we're still going, so we'll give that a shot. So the things that I thought about as part of this conversation today was kind of all the life pieces around somebody who's in the queer community and the LGBTQ plus community. Um, one of the one of the areas that stuck out to me was affordability. So I wanted to talk about that for a minute. So if you've lived here a while, you know Utah is expensive to live. The home, let's see, the home I'm in now, uh, it is about 3,000 square feet. Not massive, but that's a pretty good size house. We rent out the basement, so we only use half of that at most. And when I bought it, gosh, 9 years ago at this point, I paid 330,000. And at the time I thought, holy cow, a quarter million. I cannot even fathom that I'm buying a house this expensive. That is nuts. Today's prices, this home would probably go for something around 700,000. And I don't say that to brag by any means. I say that to just show kind of that perspective of how things have changed over time. I remember the first home I bought in West Valley was about 150,000. It was a home that actually needed some fixing up. It was kind of rough, but it had about 1,500 square feet, 4 bedroom, 2 bath, kitchen, living room, really common size. It was a split level home, common size, single family property. Today, that home would probably go for almost $500,000. Now, yes, we've seen that growth. Something unique about Utah is that we're going to continue to see that growth. Those folks that I talked to about real estate, it's like there's never a bad time to be in real estate, and jumping in now is better than waiting later because you lose that growth over time if you wait. But what makes Utah a little unique and why we keep getting this growth, the Olympics, that helps getting big things, big events coming to Utah. But we also have a lot of different industries here. And because of that wide variety of industries, we get pretty insulated from different inflation waves. Everybody's feeling high gas prices right now. That's everywhere. But you think of like Detroit, they're known for auto manufacturers and car manufacturers, manufacturing. And so when that segment declines, that whole area just suffers. Utah, we have such a wide range of different things like that that we find ourselves pretty insulated. It's also a very desirable place to live People love to raise their families here. People love all of the environment, mountains, lakes, salt flats, desert, everything that's within pretty close proximity. So a lot of outdoor enthusiasts really love Utah. So those things just keep bringing more and more people to Utah. And then we see supply and demand with housing, and it just continues to grow in price. Now, a couple stats about Utah when we talk about the queer community. Um, Utah ranks 15th in all of the US states for their LGBTQ plus population. So that's not bad. That's actually on the higher side. Now, Salt Lake City specifically is like a metropolitan area, so like the Salt Lake City Valley, it actually ranks seventh for like the percentage of LGBTQ plus folks in that area. That's even higher. We think of places that there's big gay populations like San Francisco, New York, um, different places like that, Miami, Orlando for Disney World. Um, but Utah's right up there with those large populations. Now, obviously, the difference is that we are still a smaller population than some of those areas. I think Manhattan alone in New York, I think is around 8 million people on that little strip of land, whereas I think most of Utah, I think is around 5 million, and I think about 3 million in like the Salt Lake area. So we're vastly spread out compared to somewhere like that, and half as big. Affordability, it's a tough one. What I will say, a lot of, especially in the queer community, we get to choose our own family. What that enables us to do is that we don't have to necessarily buy a home with a spouse, with a lover. We can buy a home with some chosen family, some friends, um, live with each other, those types of things that a lot of non-queer folks have a harder time doing. Um, Doing that allows you to take a home and afford that payment so much more and kind of share that wealth with everybody as that, equity and value continues to grow over time. So there's a lot of different house hacking ways and things to think about that I think make a difference in the queer community. I want to talk about politics for a minute. This feels like it's going to be a little bit of a downer, so let's get it over with. Uh, I feel like our Utah legislation is not pro LGBTQ plus at all. And everything I share here today, I don't want this to be my intention to sway you one way or another. I think only you can answer that question truly for yourself and evaluate that of, is it the right decision to stay or is it the right decision to leave? No judgment either way, whatever that decision is. But I also wanted to share a little bit about my decision of what's brought me here. So as far as legislation goes, we've had some transgender bathroom bills. Those are, you know, lovely. And why are we wasting our time on stupid things, in my opinion? We've also had Harvey Milk Boulevard attempted to be renamed to somebody who was the opposite and very anti-LGBT. Um, this is the things that our legislation is focused on. Whether it's religious backed, whether it's political party backed, tons of different reasons of why. Um, but Utah's not unique with that. We do see that in a lot of other places around the country. Um, if we compare to some places like California, San Francisco, obviously, these things would almost never even be a question or even come up. But a lot of other states do have these things that they're battling still. What keeps me motivated to live here and enjoy living here is all the community support that kind of backs against the legislation. Um, whether it's governor, senator, house, whatever it is, we've got a lot of different organizations, like Equality Utah as example. They're out there kind of fighting the fight. We have the HRC, ALCU of Utah, a lot of these organizations that are, more legally focused, challenging, getting involved in politics, to say like, nope, you can think that that's the right decision to rename Harvey Milk Boulevard or to waste our time talking about bathrooms. But nope, that's not appropriate. We're not going to do that. We're going to fight you back. So for me, having those organizations pushing back helps me like feel empowered as a Utahn, that we're not just, taking whatever the legislation's handing out. We're being involved and we're telling them, you are our representative and you need to do what we're asking and telling you to do. Now, when we think of community, kind of along those same lines, this is one that really keeps me living here in Utah. I've gotten involved with like the LGBTQ plus Chamber of Commerce. I've gotten involved with Project Rainbow. And just to see the community come together for certain things, it it is just reassuring that like there are so many people here that think the same way, that feel the same way, that have the same values. That gives me a lot of comfort knowing that like I'm not the only one. Even sometimes it feels like you're the only one when legislation's happening or whatever else. But there's so many more people here that kind of have your back, I guess is a good way to think about it. Some of the other organizations that I like, support, and think are out there really helping build the community. The Utah Pride Center. We just had the Utah Pride parade. We had the festival. That's all put on by the Utah Pride Center. We have Encircle. They are they're an organization built on like supporting families, so, kind of being a safe space for a lot of people. They have Encircle houses is what they call them. There's one, let's see, Salt Lake, Provo, St. George, I think one in Ogden. There might even be a few more that I'm not familiar with. Let's see, oh, Heber City. Um, and their big mission is, safe spaces for folks, resources and tools for youth, for young families, for young adults. They have everything from like therapy, support groups, drop-in hours, programs, education. Um, every time I go there, it's inspiring to see like these are the younger folks, the younger generation that are stepping out, being seen, being supported, and they're starting to pave the way for the rest of us. They're incredibly brave, so it's great to see that. The other big organization that's around in Utah is Love Loud. This is that you've probably heard of the Love Loud Festival, where Imagine Dragons are usually the headliner. But this is something that was created to just spread love and support, to realize that we all deserve love, we're all capable of love, we're all um, just love everything. Um, so I love going to those festivals. Really unique. We usually see some big headliners like Tyler Glenn, from Neon Trees. We also see, like I said, Imagine Dragons, Dan from Imagine Dragons. He's one of the founders, and a lot of other big performers. So it's absolutely great to see. So I think for me, community, although they're, bigger cities might have a different feel. You might I remember like going to World Pride in New York and just thinking this was so massive and huge, like blocks and blocks and blocks of a parade route. Um, just the hugest event ever, and the population there to support that. I feel like what's a little different with Utah is the population in the community is a little more closely knit. So like in New York, so many people. How do you know everybody? You may know five people in that whole strip. Whereas here, I go to events and I'm like, oh yeah, I know that person, I know that person, I know that person, I know that person, I know that person. Um, so I think bigger cities have a different feel. I like the kind of smaller community feel that we have here in Utah. And yeah, all those folks coming together to support each other, that makes a big difference for me. When we think of safety, um, Utah's kind of divided into a couple population areas. We've got the Wasatch Front, which is pretty much Ogden down to Santaquin, kind of that Utah Valley, Salt Lake Valley, Ogden Valley. And then we've also got some kind of a little more rural areas like Park City, Heber, Midway. We've got Southern Utah, St. George, there's a big population there. And then throughout the middle of the state, there's not too much. There's Moab, there's Richfield, there's a couple small, little bit bigger areas, but we're not talking millions of people. Millions of people are Wasatch Front. We might hit a million with Park City and everywhere up in the mountains, and then down in St. George, that is absolutely booming. But Salt Lake and Park City areas are the biggest welcoming and kind of safe spaces for queer folks in Utah. More rural areas seem to be less so. Um, I remember I grew up in Provo, and when I had to move down to St. George with family. I was still, 16. I was living with family. Um, didn't have the best time in St. George, 20 years ago. It was as I was coming out, that wasn't necessarily the funnest place to come out. I got back to up here, Utah County, Salt Lake County, pretty much as quick as I could, um, and have felt great here. I I don't find as I'm walking around that I am looking over my shoulder if I'm holding my husband's hand, or that I'm nervous that somebody's going to do something. Um, Obviously, it's good to be a little vigilant and just aware of your surroundings. I think that's something, unfortunately, all us queer folks do and are aware of, where other people don't have to do that. Um, but I never feel fearful in Salt Lake or even Utah County. Um, Nothing against the Ogden Valley, just not up there very often, so I couldn't say. Um, yeah, I think those are big things. Obviously, we see stuff on the news. Stuff will happen periodically. Um, just as we talked about queer folks, we have to be aware of where we're at, what's going on, and uh, where to make sure that we're safe. Now, kind of being on a little bit of a negative note, and what I mentioned earlier about why I say 99% of the folks are welcome to be here today. Um, I I enjoy creating safe spaces for queer folks. As I advertised this event today on social media, a lot of you probably saw a post that had a little heading with the title, my photo, we're on Zoom, my logo, and uh, putting that out as an advertisement, put it in front of thousands of people, kind of in this Utah area. And going forward, I'm going to be turning comments off on the actual like advertisement piece because I got probably at least five pretty shitty comments that were pretty anti-LGBT, not favorable at all. And that was me just advertising an event. Um, so I feel like when I see stuff like that, it gives me a little bit of fire that like I want to push back. I want to keep growing our community. Um, I can assume these folks with their comments have a probably pretty privileged life to never have to be looking over their shoulder, to never have to be worried about an employer firing them because of their sexuality or their identity, um, all those things that make up what it is to be a queer person. Um, we can always talk about the grass is always greener on the other side. Um, there's always positives, there's always negatives. Like I said, kind of starting here, only you can really answer that for yourself. I hope talking through some of these things gives you some different things to think about. If you ever want to like chat one-on-one, I'd be totally happy to do that. On all my profiles, I have a link for my calendar that you can book some time with me. Um, it it's kind of that idea of, yeah, where are you going to be in 5 years? What does your life look like? What makes sense for you? Where do you want to go? Um, all those kind of, deep meditative type questions. But I'm happy to talk through that with you and be that space. Um, positive and negative, right? We've all had experiences one way or another. Um, on the flip side of, having some shitty comments, I had so many, I had equally like so many people reaching out saying like, oh, that's such a cool idea for an event. That's a cool topic to talk about. Really feeling like honing in on those that I want to hone in on. It's making a difference in holding space for those folks, including myself. I always forget to include myself. Let's see if we've got any questions in the chat or any other thoughts that people are bringing up. Um, where to find, there's a question about kind of where to find queer-friendly spaces, restaurants, businesses. Two places that I use quite often. One is the LGBTQ plus Chamber of Commerce. They have a huge directory of tons of different organizations that are either queer themselves or an ally, so it's a safe space to work with. There's also the Everywhere is Queer app. That started in Portland and it has gone worldwide. There's a bunch of businesses in the Salt Lake Valley that are on there. There's also a few other places like Q Salt Lake has a listing of different businesses. The Pride Center, I looked today, has a list of different businesses there. So almost anything you need, you can find. I've also put together in my kind of own directory for real estate of which companies are safe and ally friendly to work with. If you need somebody to come into your home and remodel your bathroom, they're going to be there for a minute. So you want to make sure that is a safe space. Um, if you ever need a referral for something like that, reach out. Happy to to share what I found. And if not, I've got a good network to find something if it's pretty unique that I don't already have it. Okay, I think that's all our questions for today. Super fun having you all here. Like I said, don't be a stranger. Feel free to reach out if there's any questions, anything I can help with, even just conversation, coffee and chat. Got some tea today. Um, but happy Pride Month. Enjoy your weekend, and we'll talk soon.